The blood dripped onto Shanice's yellow kitchen floor, each drop landing with a soft tap that seemed louder than thunder in the sudden silence. Her left eye was already swelling shut, and she could taste copper in her mouth where her tooth had cut through her lip. Deshaun stood over her, his fist still clenched, while his sister Candace held a chunk of Shanice's natural hair in her manicured fingers like some kind of trophy. "Look what you made me do," Deshaun said, shaking his head like he was disappointed in a child. "All I asked was where my dinner was." Shanice tried to speak, but her jaw felt loose, wrong somehow. She had been late coming home from the salon because Mrs. Patterson needed her gray roots touched up before her church anniversary. She had texted Deshaun, told him she would pick up chicken on the way home. But that wasn't good enough. It was never good enough anymore. "You embarrassing him, walking around here like you too good to cook," Candace added, dropping the hair onto the floor next to Shanice. "Acting like your little salon makes you better than family." 8-year-old Amara's bedroom door was closed upstairs, and Shanice prayed her baby girl had her headphones on, lost in one of those YouTube videos she loved watching. This wasn't the first time things had gotten physical, but it was the worst. Usually Deshaun would push her, maybe grab her arm too tight. But tonight, when she had walked through the door with the KFC bag apologizing for being late, he had exploded. "I work 12 hours at the plant while you play beauty shop," he had yelled. "The least you can do is have food ready when I get home." When Shanice had tried to explain about Mrs. Patterson, about how the elderly woman had no one else to help her look nice for her special day, Deshaun had laughed. A cold, mean laugh that made Shanice's stomach clench. "Always somebody else more important than your own husband," he had said. That's when Candace had spoken up from her spot on the couch, where she spent most evenings since losing her apartment 6 months ago. "She thinks she all that since Grandma Ruby left her that building. Acting brand new." Shanice had inherited the small building that housed her salon from her grandmother, who had run a beauty shop there for 40 years. It was the only thing that was truly hers, the only place where she felt like herself. At the salon, she was boss lady Shanice, the woman who could make anyone feel beautiful, who listened to problems and offered advice along with perfect relaxers and flawless braids. But here at home she was shrinking smaller every day. "I'm sorry," Shanice had whispered, holding up the food bag. "I brought your favorite." That's when Deshaun's hand had connected with her face, sending her stumbling backward into the kitchen counter. The sound of the slap echoed through the house, and Shanice had heard Amara's door open upstairs, then quickly close again. "Deshaun, stop." Shanice had cried out, but Candace was already moving, grabbing a handful of Shanice's hair and yanking her head back. "Nah, she need to learn," Candace had said. "You too soft on her, brother." Mama would have knocked sense into her by now. Their mother had been gone for 10 years, but Candace still invoked her memory whenever she wanted to justify cruelty. Mrs. Thompson had been a hard woman who believed wives should be seen and not heard, that a man's word was law in his house. She had raised her children with those beliefs, and now they were using them as weapons against Shanice. When Deshaun had hit her the second time, Shanice had fallen to the floor. That's when Candace had really started pulling her hair, dragging her toward the back door like she was taking out trash. "Maybe a night outside will teach you some respect," Candace had said. But something in Shanice had finally broken. Not her spirit, that had been bending for 3 years. What broke was her fear. As Candace dragged her by the hair and Deshaun opened the back door, Shanice thought about Amara upstairs, probably scared and confused. She thought about Grandma Ruby, who had survived worse than this and built something beautiful anyway. She thought about all the women who sat in her salon chair and told her their troubles, looking at her like she had answers. Maybe it was time to start having some. As they pushed her toward the door, Shanice caught sight of her phone on the kitchen counter. The screen was cracked from when Deshaun had thrown it last month, but it still worked. It was just out of reach but close enough to give her hope. "Please," she said, making her voice small and scared the way they expected. "I'll do better. I promise." Deshaun paused, his hand on the door handle. For a moment, Shanice thought he might actually listen. But then Candace laughed. "She promising now? Too late for all that." They shoved her outside into the cold October night, and Shanice heard the deadbolt click into place. She was locked out of her own house, wearing nothing but the thin work clothes she had on at the salon. Her face throbbed, her scalp burned where patches of hair had been pulled out, and she could feel bruises forming on her arms where they had grabbed her. But for the first time in months, Shanice felt something other than fear. She felt angry. The house was quiet now except for the sound of the television. Deshaun and Candace thought they had won, thought they had put her in her place. They didn't know that Mrs. Evelyn next door was a night owl who would still be awake. They didn't know that Shanice had been planning for a moment like this, even if she hadn't admitted it to herself. Most importantly, they didn't know that Grandma Ruby had taught her more than just how to run a business. She had taught her how to survive. Shanice looked up at Amara's bedroom window and saw the faint glow of her nightlight. Her daughter was safe for now, but this couldn't continue. Not anymore. Tonight had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. As she walked around to the front of the house, Shanice felt in her pocket for the spare phone she had hidden there months ago. It was an old flip phone, basic and cheap, but it worked. She had bought it with cash and kept it charged, telling herself it was just in case of emergencies. Well, this was definitely an emergency. The phone screen lit up in the darkness, and Shanice dialed a number she had memorized but never thought she would use. As it rang, she looked back at the house where she had tried to build a life, where she had slowly lost herself piece by piece. Tomorrow everything would be different. The phone stopped ringing and a familiar voice answered. Jasmine Parker, attorney at law. How can I help you? Jazz, it's me, Shanice whispered into the phone, her voice barely carrying in the cold night air. There was a pause, then Jasmine's voice came through clearer, more alert. Shanice? Girl, what time is it? Are you okay? Shanice had met Jasmine in college, back when they were both young and full of dreams. While Shanice had dropped out to marry Deshaun, Jasmine had pushed through law school and built a successful practice. They had stayed friends, though Deshaun had made it harder over the years, always finding reasons why Shanice couldn't go out, couldn't maintain her friendships. I need help, Shanice said, touching her swollen face gingerly. I'm ready. Those two words carried the weight of 3 years of conversations. Jasmine had been telling Shanice for months that she needed to leave Deshaun, had offered to help her file for divorce, had even offered to let Shanice and Amara stay at her place. But Shanice had always made excuses, always found reasons to stay. Not anymore. Where are you? Jasmine asked, and Shanice could hear her moving around, probably getting dressed. Outside my house. They locked me out. They? Who's they? Deshaun and Candace. They. Shanice's voice broke as the reality of what had happened started to sink in. They beat me up, Jess. In front of my baby's room. The silence on the other end of the phone stretched for several seconds. When Jasmine spoke again, her voice was different. Harder. This was lawyer Jasmine now, not just friend Jasmine. Did you call the police? Not yet. I called you first. Good. Don't move. I'm coming to get you, then we're going to the hospital, then the police station. Do not go back in that house alone, you hear me? Shanice looked around the quiet neighborhood. Most of the houses were dark, their occupants safe in their beds. She envied them their peace, their normal Friday nights. What about Amara? I can't leave her in there with them. We'll figure it out. But right now, you need medical attention and we need to document everything. Is she safe tonight? Shanice thought about it. For all his faults, Deshaun had never laid a hand on Amara. He loved his stepdaughter in his own way, had adopted her when she was 4 and he and Shanice got married. It was one of the things that had made Shanice fall for him in the first place, seeing how gentle he could be with her little girl. Yeah, she's safe. He won't hurt her. Okay, I'm in my car now. Stay on the phone with me. As Jasmine drove through the empty streets, Shanice found herself really looking at her neighborhood for the first time in months. The small houses lined up in neat rows, each with their little front yards and American flags. This was supposed to be the American dream, the life she had worked for. But dreams could turn into nightmares so slowly you didn't notice until you were trapped in them. Shanice, talk to me. How bad are you hurt? Shanice took inventory of her injuries. Her left eye was swollen, her lip was cut, her scalp was tender where hair had been pulled out. Her ribs ached where she had hit the counter. I think I'm okay. Nothing broken. That's not okay, honey. None of this is okay. A police car drove slowly down the street, and Shanice instinctively stepped behind a tree. She wasn't ready to talk to police yet, wasn't ready to make this official. Once she reported it, there would be no going back. I see you, Jasmine said, and Shanice looked up to see her friend's silver Honda pulling up to the curb. Come on. Shanice hung up the phone and walked to the car, suddenly feeling self-conscious about her appearance. Jasmine took one look at her face and her expression hardened even more. Oh, hell no, Jasmine said, reaching over to unlock the passenger door. Get in. We're ending this tonight. As they drove to the hospital, Shanice caught glimpses of herself in the side mirror. Her face was a mess, her hair wild where it hadn't been pulled out. She looked like a victim, and the sight made her stomach turn. I should have left sooner, she said quietly. Don't do that, Jasmine replied firmly. Don't blame yourself for what they did to you. You survived and now you're getting out. That takes courage. The emergency room was mostly empty at this hour, and they were seen quickly. The nurse who examined Shanice was gentle but thorough, taking pictures of all the injuries, asking careful questions about what had happened. Shanice told the truth, even the parts that made her feel ashamed. "The police will want to talk to you," the nurse said. "Are you ready for that?" Shanice looked at Jasmine, who nodded encouragingly. "Yes," Shanice said. "I'm ready." Detective Rita Brown arrived an hour later, a tall black woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She had been working domestic violence cases for 15 years and had seen it all. But something about Shanice's story resonated with her. "Tell me what happened tonight," Detective Brown said, settling into the chair beside Shanice's hospital bed. Shanice told the story again, this time in more detail. She talked about the escalating abuse, the way Deshawn had isolated her from friends and family, the way Candace had encouraged and participated in the violence. As she spoke, Detective Brown took careful notes. "Has he hit you before?" the detective asked. "Not like this. Usually just pushes me around, grabs me too hard. Tonight was different." "And his sister Candace? She lives with you?" "For 6 months now. Ever since she lost her apartment. She's been making things worse, telling Deshawn I don't respect him enough, that I need to be put in my place." Detective Brown nodded. She had seen this pattern before. Abusers often had enablers who encouraged their behavior, family members who believed violence was acceptable in certain circumstances. "What about your daughter? Has she witnessed the abuse?" Shanice's voice broke. "She was upstairs tonight. She's seen him push me before, but tonight, she heard everything." "How old is she?" 8. Detective Brown's expression softened slightly. 8 was old enough to understand what was happening, old enough to be traumatized by it. This wasn't just about Shanice anymore. "Mrs. Thompson, I want you to know that what happened to you tonight is assault. Both your husband and his sister can be charged. Are you willing to press charges?" Shanice felt Jasmine's hand squeeze hers. This was the moment of truth, the point of no return. Once she said yes, everything would change. Deshawn would be arrested. There would be court dates and lawyers and a very public end to her marriage. But then she thought about Amara, about the sound of her bedroom door closing when the violence started. She thought about all the women who came to her salon with stories of their own pain, who stayed with men who hurt them because leaving seemed impossible. Maybe it was time to show them that it wasn't impossible after all. "Yes," Shanice said firmly. "I want to press charges." Detective Brown smiled. "Good. Let's go get them." The sun was just beginning to rise when the police cars pulled up in front of Shanice's house. Detective Brown had worked quickly, getting the arrest warrants signed by a judge who specialized in domestic violence cases. Shanice sat in Jasmine's car across the street, watching as officers surrounded her home. Her home. It was strange to think of it that way now. The little yellow house with the white picket fence that she had been so proud of when they first moved in. She had painted the shutters herself, planted the flower garden that Deshawn had never helped her maintain. Now it just looked like a prison she had finally escaped. "You don't have to watch this," Jasmine said softly. "We can drive around the block." "No," Shanice replied, her voice stronger than it had been in months. "I want to see it." Detective Brown knocked on the front door, and Shanice could see movement through the living room window. Candace appeared first, opening the door in her pajamas with an attitude written all over her face. Even from across the street, Shanice could see her gesturing wildly, probably telling the officers they had no right to be there. Then Deshawn appeared, and Shanice felt her heart skip a beat. For a moment she almost felt sorry for him. He looked confused, vulnerable in his white t-shirt and boxers. This was the man she had fallen in love with, the one who had promised to take care of her and Amara forever. But then she remembered the feeling of his fist connecting with her face, the sound of Candace laughing as they dragged her by her hair. The sympathy died quickly. Detective Brown was talking to them, showing them the warrants. Shanice couldn't hear what was being said, but she could see Deshawn's posture change as he realized what was happening. He started shaking his head, pointing toward the street where Shanice sat watching. "He sees you," Jasmine said. "Good," Shanice replied. "Let him see." The officers moved efficiently. Deshawn was handcuffed first, his hands secured behind his back as Detective Brown read him his rights. He kept looking toward Shanice's car, his expression a mixture of anger and disbelief. Candace was next, and she fought the handcuffs, her voice carrying across the quiet morning air as she screamed about innocent people being persecuted. Then Shanice saw movement in an upstairs window. Amara's face appeared, small and scared, watching her father figure being taken away in handcuffs. Shanice's heart broke. I have to go to her, Shanice said, reaching for the door handle. Wait, Jasmine caught her arm. Let them finish processing the scene first. You don't want to contaminate anything they might need for evidence. It was the longest 10 minutes of Shanice's life, watching her daughter's face in the window while police officers searched her house for evidence of the assault. They found strands of her hair in the kitchen, photographed the blood drops on the floor that hadn't been cleaned up. They bagged Deshawn's shirt, which still had her blood on the knuckles. Finally, Detective Brown walked over to their car. They're both in custody, she said through the window. The house is secure. You can go in and get your daughter now, but I'll need you to be careful not to disturb the kitchen area until our crime scene team finishes. Shanice nodded and got out of the car. Her legs felt shaky as she walked up the front path, past the flowers she had planted with such hope 3 years ago. The front door was standing open, and she could see into the living room where Candace's belongings were scattered around. Clothes on the couch, dirty dishes on the coffee table, evidence of a life lived without regard for anyone else's comfort. Amara, baby? Shanice called as she climbed the stairs. Her daughter's bedroom door opened slowly and Amara peeked out. When she saw her mother's bruised face, her eyes filled with tears. Mama, what happened to you? Shanice knelt down and opened her arms. Amara ran to her and Shanice held her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her daughter's hair, feeling the steady beat of her heart. Mama's okay now, Shanice said, though her voice was thick with emotion. Everything's going to be okay. Where did Daddy Deshawn go? Why were there police cars? Shanice pulled back to look at her daughter's face. Amara had Deshawn's dark eyes but Shanice's stubborn chin. She was smart, too smart sometimes, and she deserved an honest answer. Daddy Deshawn hurt Mama last night, Shanice said carefully. The police came to make sure he can't hurt me anymore. Is he coming back? Not for a while, baby. Maybe not ever. Amara nodded solemnly. At 8 years old, she had seen enough to understand that sometimes adults made bad choices. She had heard the fighting, seen her mother's bruises that Shanice thought she had hidden so well. Are we going to live somewhere else now? Amara asked. For a little while, yes. We're going to stay with Aunt Jasmine until Mama figures things out. Can I pack my toys? The question was so innocent, so practical, that Shanice almost laughed. Here she was, having the most serious conversation of their lives, and her daughter was worried about her toys. Yes, baby. Pack whatever you want to take. As Amara gathered her belongings, Shanice walked through the house she had called home for 3 years. In the master bedroom, she packed quickly, just clothes and personal items, the important documents she had hidden in a shoebox in the closet. She left behind the wedding photos, the gifts Deshawn had given her during the good times, all the physical reminders of a marriage that had slowly turned toxic. In her jewelry box, she found the necklace Grandma Ruby had given her on her wedding day. It was a simple gold chain with a small cross, nothing fancy, but it had belonged to her great-grandmother before that. Grandma Ruby had told her to wear it whenever she needed strength. Shanice fastened it around her neck and felt a little bit of that strength flow into her. Downstairs, Jasmine was talking to Detective Brown about the next steps. There would be court dates, preliminary hearings, possibly a trial. Deshawn and Candace would be held pending bail hearings, which might not happen until Monday since it was now Saturday morning. What about a restraining order? Jasmine asked. I'll get the paperwork started today, Detective Brown replied. Emergency orders should be in place by this afternoon. Shanice listened to them talk about her life like it was a case to be managed, a problem to be solved. In a way, that's exactly what it was. She had become a statistic, another woman who had stayed too long with a man who hurt her. But she was also something else now. She was a survivor. Mama, I'm ready, Amara said, appearing at the top of the stairs with her backpack and a small suitcase. Me too, baby, Shanice replied. Me too. As they walked out of the house, Shanice turned to take one last look. The kitchen window was visible from the front yard, and she could see the evidence tape the police had left behind. By Monday, the whole neighborhood would know what had happened. People would talk, make judgments, take sides. But for the first time in 3 years, Shanice didn't care what people thought. She was free. 3 months later, Shanice stood in front of the bathroom mirror in Jasmine's guest bedroom, applying concealer to the last fading bruise on her cheek. The swelling around her eye had gone down weeks ago, and her hair had grown back where it had been pulled out. But the emotional healing was taking longer. Mama, are you ready? Amara called from the hallway. Miss Jasmine made pancakes. Coming, baby, Shanice replied, taking one last look at herself in the mirror. She looked different now. Stronger somehow. The constant tension that had lived in her shoulders for 3 years was finally starting to ease. She was sleeping better, laughing more. Even Amara had noticed the change. "You smile more now, Mama," her daughter had said just last week. "Like you used to when I was little." The trial was scheduled to start in 2 weeks. Deshawn and Candace had both been released on bail after spending the weekend in jail, but the restraining order kept them away from Shanice and Amara. Deshawn had tried to call her several times, leaving voicemail messages that ranged from apologetic to angry to downright threatening. Jasmine had advised her to save them all as evidence. "Good morning, beautiful," Jasmine said as Shanice entered the kitchen. She was standing at the stove, flipping pancakes while Amara sat at the breakfast bar, already working on her stack. "These are the best pancakes ever," Amara announced, syrup dripping down her chin. "Don't let your Grandma Ruby hear you say that," Shanice replied, ruffling her daughter's hair. "She thinks she makes the best pancakes in the world." Grandma Ruby. Shanice needed to call her today, needed to tell her about the decision she had made. It wasn't going to be an easy conversation. The salon had been closed for 3 months while Shanice dealt with the legal proceedings and tried to get her life back together. Her regular customers had been understanding, but she knew she was losing business every day the doors stayed locked. Some of her clients had found other stylists and she couldn't blame them. But yesterday she had made up her mind. It was time to reopen. "I'm going to the salon today," Shanice announced, accepting the plate of pancakes Jasmine handed her. "By yourself?" Jasmine asked, concern creeping into her voice. "It's time, Jas. I can't hide forever." The truth was, Shanice missed her salon desperately. She missed the rhythm of her work, the satisfaction of making women feel beautiful, the community of women who gathered there to share their lives. The salon wasn't just her business, it was her sanctuary, the place where she felt most like herself. After breakfast, Shanice drove through the familiar streets toward her salon. The building looked the same from the outside, a small brick structure wedged between a barbershop and a convenience store. But the windows were dusty and she could see mail piled up behind the glass door. She sat in her car for a few minutes, gathering courage. What if people blamed her for what had happened? What if they thought she should have left sooner, should have been stronger? What if no one came back? Then she remembered something Grandma Ruby used to say, "Baby girl, you can't let fear make your decisions for you. Fear will keep you small when God meant for you to be big." Shanice got out of the car and unlocked the salon door. The space smelled stale from being closed up for so long. Dust motes danced in the sunlight streaming through the windows. Her styling chair sat empty, waiting. The shelves were still stocked with products. The mirrors still reflected back the same warm, welcoming space she had created. She walked to the back office and found the phone book, then started making calls. First to the electric company to make sure the power would stay on. Then to her product suppliers to place new orders. Finally to her former employees. "Girl, where have you been?" asked Tanya, who had worked at the salon for 2 years before Shanice closed. "I heard something happened, but nobody knew the details." Shanice took a deep breath. "Deshawn and I are getting divorced. Things got complicated." It was an understatement, but she wasn't ready to share the whole story with everyone yet. There would be time for that later when she was stronger. "Well, I've been working at that place on Madison, but the owner is crazy and the customers are rude," Tanya said. "You reopening?" "Monday morning. You interested in coming back?" "Honey, yes. I missed working with you." One by one, Shanice called her former clients. Some of them had moved on, found new stylists they were happy with. But many were excited to hear from her, eager to schedule appointments. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly woman whose roots had led to that final confrontation, cried when she heard Shanice's voice. "I blamed myself," Mrs. Patterson said. "If I hadn't kept you late that night." "Don't you dare blame yourself," Shanice said firmly. "You didn't do anything wrong. None of this was your fault." As she talked to her clients, Shanice realized she was saying those words as much for herself as for them. She had spent months blaming herself, wondering what she could have done differently, how she could have prevented what happened. But the truth was simpler and harder to accept. Deshawn and Candace were responsible for their own actions. She was responsible for hers. And her action had been to survive, to get out, to build something better. By the end of the day, her appointment book was half full for the following week. It wasn't as busy as she had been before, but it was a start. As she locked up the salon, Shanice felt something she hadn't experienced in months, hope for the future. Her phone rang as she got in her car. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize. "Hello? Mrs. Thompson? This is Detective Brown. I wanted to give you an update on your case." Shanice's stomach clenched. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Actually, I have good news. Deshawn's lawyer called this morning. He wants to make a deal. What kind of deal? He'll plead guilty to the assault charges in exchange for a shorter sentence. No trial necessary. His sister is also willing to plead guilty. Shanice pulled over to the side of the road. No trial meant no testimony, no reliving that night in front of a courtroom full of strangers. It meant she could move forward without having to look back. What would the sentence be? For Deshawn, probably 2 years with the possibility of parole in 18 months. For Candace, 1 year. Plus mandatory anger management and domestic violence counseling for both of them. It wasn't as much time as Shanice might have wanted, but it was justice. More importantly, it was closure. I need to think about it, she said. Of course. Take your time. But I think it's a good deal, honestly. Trials are unpredictable, and this way you get a guaranteed conviction. After hanging up, Shanice sat in her car and cried. Not tears of sadness or fear, but tears of relief. It was really over. Deshawn would go to prison, and she would be free to rebuild her life without the shadow of a trial hanging over her. When she got back to Jasmine's house, Amara was doing homework at the kitchen table while Jasmine reviewed legal briefs on her laptop. How did it go? Jasmine asked, looking up from her work. Good, Shanice said, and she meant it. Really good. I think we're going to be okay. Amara looked up from her math worksheet. Mama, can we have our own place soon? I like staying with Aunt Jasmine, but I miss having my own room. Shanice looked at her daughter, this resilient little girl who had been through so much and still managed to find joy in small things. She deserved stability, a place to call home. Soon, baby, Shanice promised. Very soon. That night, after Amara was asleep, Shanice called Grandma Ruby. Well, it's about time, her grandmother said without preamble. I was wondering when you were going to call and tell me you were ready to take over the family business. Shanice laughed. Even at 72, Grandma Ruby was still sharp as a tack. How did you know? Baby girl, I've been running that beauty shop for 40 years. You think I don't know when my granddaughter is ready to step into her power? I'm scared, Grandma. What if I mess it up? You won't. And even if you do, you'll figure it out. That's what strong women do, we figure it out. As Shanice hung up the phone, she felt the last piece of her new life clicking into place. She had a business to run, a daughter to raise, and a future to build. For the first time in years, that future looked bright. 1 year later, Shanice stood in front of her salon, watching as the new sign was hung above the door. Ruby's Legacy Beauty Salon. It read in elegant gold letters. She had renamed the business in honor of her grandmother, who had passed away peacefully in her sleep 6 months earlier. It looks perfect, Mama, Amara said, squeezing her mother's hand. At 9 years old, Amara had grown taller and more confident. She spent her afternoons at the salon, doing homework in the back office or helping sweep hair from the floor. The other stylists spoiled her with attention, and she had become the unofficial salon mascot. Miss Shanice, called Mrs. Patterson from across the street. The elderly woman had become one of Shanice's most loyal customers, coming in every 2 weeks for a wash and set. The sign looks beautiful. Shanice waved back, then checked her watch. The grand reopening celebration would start in an hour, and she still had things to prepare. The salon was busier than it had ever been, with a waiting list of new clients and a team of 4 stylists who had become like family. Detective Brown had become a regular customer too, stopping by once a month for a trim and to check on how Shanice was doing. Deshawn had served 18 months in prison and was now living in another state, honoring the terms of his parole that kept him away from Shanice and Amara. Candace had served her full year and hadn't attempted to contact them since her release. Mama, look who's here. Amara called out excitedly. Shanice turned to see Jasmine walking up the sidewalk, carrying a large flower arrangement and grinning from ear to ear. I can't believe how amazing this place looks, Jasmine said, giving Shanice a hug. Grandma Ruby would be so proud. The salon was indeed transformed. Shanice had used the insurance money from the divorce settlement to completely renovate the space. The walls were painted a warm sage green, with elegant gold accents throughout. New styling chairs sat in front of modern mirrors, and the shampoo area had been expanded with luxurious reclining chairs. But most importantly, the space felt alive again, filled with laughter and conversation. I have something for you, Jasmine said, pulling out a small wrapped package. It's from all of us. Me, Detective Brown, even Mrs. Patterson pitched in. Shanice unwrapped the gift carefully. Inside was a beautiful picture frame containing a photo of her and Grandma Ruby taken on the day she had inherited the salon. But surrounding the photo were dozens of small notes, words of encouragement from her clients, her friends, her community. We wanted you to remember how many people believe in you, Jasmine explained. As Shanice read the notes, her eyes filled with tears. You're stronger than you know, read one from Detective Brown. Thank you for showing me what courage looks like, read another from Mrs. Patterson. You saved yourself and that saved me too, from a client who had left her own abusive relationship after hearing Shanice's story. The celebration that evening was everything Shanice had hoped for and more. The salon was packed with clients, friends, neighbors and local business owners. Tanya had decorated with balloons and streamers in gold and green, and Mrs. Evelyn from next door had brought homemade cookies. As the evening wound down, Shanice found herself standing in the same spot where she had first reopened the salon a year ago. But everything was different now. She was different. Mama, can I tell you something? Amara asked, appearing at her mother's side. Of course, baby. What is it? I'm proud of you, Amara said simply. For being brave. Shanice knelt down to her daughter's level. You know what, sweet girl? I'm proud of us. We did this together. Later that night, after all the guests had gone home and the salon was quiet again, Shanice sat in her styling chair and looked around at what she had built. Not just the business but the community. Women came to her salon not just to get their hair done, but to find support, encouragement, and friendship. She had created a safe space, a place where women could be vulnerable and strong at the same time. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. I saw the article about your salon in the paper. I'm in a situation like you were. Can we talk? Shanice stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, yes. Come in tomorrow at 10 a.m. We'll figure it out together. As she locked up the salon for the night, Shanice thought about the journey that had brought her here. The pain, the fear, the moment when she had finally found the courage to make that phone call. The long road of healing and rebuilding that had followed. She touched the cross necklace that still hung around her neck, the one Grandma Ruby had given her. She could almost hear her grandmother's voice. Baby girl, sometimes God breaks us down so he can build us back up stronger. Shanice had been broken, that was true. But she had been rebuilt too, piece by piece, choice by choice, day by day. And now she was using her strength to help other women find theirs. The little yellow house where she and Amara now lived was just around the corner from the salon. It was smaller than the one she had shared with Deshawn, but it was truly theirs. Amara had painted her bedroom walls purple, and Shanice had planted a new garden in the backyard. They were building new memories, new traditions, a new life. As she walked home under the streetlights, Shanice felt grateful for the woman she had become. Not despite what she had been through, but because of it. She had learned that she was stronger than she had ever imagined, braver than she had given herself credit for, and worthy of love and respect. Most importantly, she had learned that it's never too late to save yourself. The next morning, a young woman named Kendra walked into Ruby's Legacy Beauty Salon. She was nervous, jumpy, with a long-sleeved shirt that couldn't quite hide the bruises on her wrists. Shanice recognized the look in her eyes. It was the same look she had seen in her own reflection for 3 years. I don't know where to start, Kendra said, her voice barely above a whisper. Shanice guided her to a chair and began gently combing through her hair. You already started, she said softly. You walked through that door. That was the hardest part. As she worked, Shanice told Kendra her story. Not to frighten her, but to show her that survival was possible, that life after abuse could be beautiful. By the time Kendra left that day, she had Jasmine's phone number, information about local shelters, and most importantly, hope. Over the following months, Kendra became a regular client. Shanice watched her transformation, the way she began to speak up for herself, the way her shoulders straightened, the way she started to smile. When Kendra finally left her abusive boyfriend and moved into her own apartment, Shanice threw her a small celebration at the salon. You saved my life, Kendra told her that day. No, Shanice replied, you saved your own life. I just showed you it was possible. Word spread through the community about what Shanice was doing. Women started coming to her salon not just for hair services, but for support and guidance. Some were ready to leave their abusers. Others were just beginning to recognize that they were in dangerous situations. Shanice helped them all, connecting them with resources, offering encouragement, and most importantly, showing them through her own example that they could rebuild their lives. 5 years after that terrible night when Deshawn and Candace had beaten her and thrown her out of her own home, Shanice stood on the stage at the community center, accepting an award for her work with domestic violence survivors. Amara, now 13 and beautiful, sat in the front row beaming with pride. I'm not here because I'm special, Shanice told the audience. I'm here because I made a choice. I chose to save myself, and then I chose to help other women do the same. Every woman in an abusive relationship has that same choice. It's never too late to take it. After the ceremony, Detective Brown, now retired but still volunteering with domestic violence organizations, approached Shanice. "You know," she said, "in all my years working these cases, I've never seen anyone take their pain and turn it into something so beautiful. Your grandmother would be proud." Shanice looked out at the crowd of women who had come to support her. Clients, friends, survivors she had helped over the years. They were all different ages, different backgrounds, different stories. But they were all united by their strength, their courage, their refusal to let their past define their future. "I think she would be," Shanice agreed. "I think she really would be." That night, as she tucked Amara into bed, her daughter asked, "Mama, do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't made that phone call to Aunt Jasmine?" Shanice considered the question. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But then I remember that I did make that call. And that changed everything." "I'm glad you did," Amara said sleepily. "I like our life now." "Me too, baby," Shanice replied, kissing her daughter's forehead. "Me too." As she turned off the lights and headed to her own room, Shanice caught sight of herself in the hallway mirror. The woman looking back at her was confident, strong, at peace. Her face bore no traces of the bruises that had once marked it. Her eyes held no fear, only determination and love. She had kept the promise she made to herself that night 5 years ago. She had not just survived, she had thrived. And in doing so, she had shown dozens of other women that they could thrive too. Ruby's Legacy Beauty Salon continued to be more than just a business. It was a beacon of hope, a place where broken women came to be healed, where survivors came to help other survivors. The cycle of violence that had nearly destroyed Shanice had been transformed into a cycle of healing and empowerment. And it all started with one phone call, one moment of courage, one woman's decision to save herself.